Religion was to assist mankind find hope and joy in living, but when it no longer able to serve, it can destroy. I realized that religions I had learnt about, especially after encountering the witnesses, proved to belong to that category, ever ready to destroy joy in living. Some religions upon earth were to teach not only good morals, but also help people with their health. Remember, hygiene and cleanliness are so vitally important, for any kind of infection and inflammation can lead to sepsis. It is a disease from which thousands of people have died throughout the centuries, as they still do. It leads to organ failure and amputation of limbs, even today. Therefore, any kind of infection should be avoided or treated as soon as possible before the undesirable happens. Interestingly, when there was no medical development in ancient times, religions were emphasizing cleanliness. Maybe religious thought was the forerunner of today's developments. Therefore, medicine's role in life everywhere is realized. As one discovers, today multitudes of belief systems on earth can no longer help us, for they have all undergone extreme changes, based only on selfish and power-hungry controllers of current humanity. There were so many more matters to consider in regard to humanity. There was so much more to share, and therefore it was suggested that we should meet more often. However, if and when our brothers from different recesses of just one galaxy utilized their sciences and communicated with Earth's so-called leaders, including those of their religious organizations, at this stage it could create opposing ideals. This was the reason for their extreme caution. One said, "For the moment, we can only attempt to inform a few who can at least write down these issues. We are all willing to help your kind out of our unconditional love for life, and you are included. Never think for a moment that you are all alone in the universe. Know that we cannot interfere with your evolvement. We can only assist you if you are willing to receive our assistance, and only if you can accept us as we are. We are not your dreams, but we are in your dreams. If you can accept our reality, we can become your reality, assisting you to advance within a world which is planned to become a storehouse of knowledge of ages." They explained how Earth could contain the entire history of the universe, and spoke about coming medical advances on Earth, how human life was going to be improved, so that humans would have longer lives. Many of those advances were evidenced by the people of Earth needed to be patient for few more decades yet to come. If only they would listen to reason and stop all the nonsense of their warring efforts against each other due to their beliefs and sectarian animosities, they would advance to such heights they have never imagined possible. Earthmen needed to realize that their individual selves represented yet another universe. Personally, when I was putting these words together in my notebook at the time, I did not take them too seriously. But when I looked at them from time to time, as I matured, they began to make more sense. As humans, we were heading towards major changes in our Earthian lives. It was not going to be as those preaching about the truths of the Bible, but rather by discarding ancient dogmas and belief systems and looking forward to the future through research and scientific advancements. Perhaps humans need to analyze their ancient myths more open-mindedly and share their findings with each other without forming more cults. At the time of my experiencing this unique outing, I honestly thought that everything so far spoken by the unusual guests within this outlandish environment was nothing more than science fantasy. I accepted it as something beautiful, but as years rolled by and I matured, I began to appreciate them more as honest realities. In truth, I believe that we need to share some vitally important points to ponder upon. What we have discovered was the type of information containing viewpoints similar to the so-called aliens' wisdom when they were interviewed, but which allegedly the U.S. government preferred not to release. However, the information does not consider anything secretive or political in nature. Some intergalactic travelers claim to be future descendants of humans who wanted to warn us about the possibility of nuclear devastation if mankind continues its current path. They informed us that the origins of the universe were based on the very nature of so-called life and its beginnings. How could one describe life? The meaning thereof is something ascribed, as nature being the objective reality. How did it all start? Was the universe created? Was God responsible for its evolvement? What was explained showed us that we all created a need for superstitions, a need for God and other myths. This led the way to the belief of death, followed by a reward system in the form of an afterlife. But what really happens when one dies? What our space relatives inform us is this: death is a human assumption and human creation, for it does not exist. They tell us that everybody on Earth will experience and have experienced every instance of so-called life. Every one of us, no matter what part of the universe or time we may originate from, are instances of the same existence, separated by what humans consider as death. In reality, there is no death, and we experience each other's lives. There are an infinite number of universes, each having different properties. Not all of them support life as we know it. However, we live in a universe which supports what we understand as life. The question remains: why do humans destroy themselves constantly, even by nuclear wars? Our space brothers' response is that man's beliefs, superstitions, and indeed dogmas are the real culprit. Religious and political dogmas seem to be the root of all current human conflicts, as it was in the past. Unfortunately, during this 21st century, the access to weapons of mass destruction by nations with opposing ideals which are ruled by dogma may destroy great numbers of the world's population. This encourages us to question the subject of morality. Let us also understand that our space brothers base their morality on evidence and compassion. Many travelers from intergalactic space, however, are those who came here from thousands of light years into the future. They understand that to travel in time is to travel in space, offset by spatial divergence. Some of them are evolutionary descendants evolved from the human species, visiting their ancestral world, observing and trying to understand the lost information and evidence destroyed during a worldwide nuclear war, and only a small number had survived. I discovered more about the futility of humanity's belief systems and their completely unethical, indeed sometimes immoral, enterprises. Organized religious beliefs could not provide true understanding and wisdom. My marriage to a dedicated Jehovah's Witness, with all the hypnotic influence of their teachings, according to their interpretations of the Bible, did not make it any better. In fact, I have been helped to realize that through my association with them, and having started a family unit with Magda, this organized belief system was also groping in darkness by rejecting any possible advancement. Therefore, complete separation from them was the best action to undertake, as far as I was concerned. We cannot deny the reality that we are living in a progressive existence if we can comprehend and accept, no matter in what dimension or domain we are present. We need to take advantage of this if we really want to improve our ways as an entire humanity. I could not say how long we spent in this magnificent environment with these magnificent people. I was happy having shared some time with them and wished it would have lasted a lot longer. However, we had immediate responsibilities and needed to return to our home and the baby. This was part of our evolution, living on Earth for now. We glided back towards the moon, with its rugged landscape, and were a little closer than the previous occasion. We made one revolution around this beautiful but rugged world, and began our short and fast journey towards the planet I was born on. What a magnificent sight it was to behold, a fantastic blue orb, so delicate and so fragile Earth. Its blue atmosphere and fluffy clouds evident. Soon we were floating into its brilliant atmosphere, making one wonder how thin it was, yet thick enough to sustain human and animal life, as well as vegetation, upon this magnificent world. Our journey was coming to an end, and that made me feel sad. However, I distinctly heard a voice telling me that this was one of many more such journeyings with my friends. Passing through the atmospheric envelope, thick cloud layers, storms, and the night side of Earth, we became aware of the continents of Asia, Southeast Asia, Australia, and Tasmania. Once again, we were gazing upon the city of Hobart, amongst a few other townships spread around. Soon, the nearby suburbs, with streetlights, followed by a few cars and pedestrians. Finally, the rooftop of Sister Kurdovik's home, and our little dwelling came into view. Now we were in front of our front door, and our lights were still on. As our friends farewelled us, I was full of hope to meet them again sometime soon. We entered the oblong opening and glided down the extension to the ground with two of our friends accompanying us. As we entered our dwelling, they extended their arms as if to say goodbye for now, and went back into the craft. While gazing upon this magnificent vehicle of flight, it quickly shot up into the distance, and the new friends we briefly met zoomed away at less than a 45-degree angle towards the north. I kept hearing in my mind, "We will meet again soon." Magda pushed the door open and sat on the couch, immediately falling into a deep sleep, without uttering a word while I closed the door and checked on Annette. She was fine and sleeping very comfortably. After making some tea, I asked Magda if she wanted to have something hot, as I thought she was awake at that moment, as her eyelids were flickering. As she awoke from her brief slumber, her characteristics intact, she told me to get rid of all my evil books if I loved her, for they were apparently having a very bad effect on us, I told her all my remaining books were textbooks on science and psychology, and were not evil. She repeated her words, saying that if I loved her, I would burn them all in front of her, and then she would know that I loved her. I showed her the 2 books written by George Adamski, which I had recently obtained, asking her if she would be happier when I gave them to some friends as a gift, and queried if it would prove my absolute devotion to her, as she demanded. "No," she shouted. "No, I want you to get rid of all your evil books." I obviously needed to hide them from her. I also had other items of scientific worth, but to her they would present nothing other than evil, and I was not prepared to part from them. Then I made a deliberate attempt, asking her why she was so keen for me to destroy all my textbooks. And she answered, "You know, while dozing off, I was having a nightmare. It is what I believe. I know it is coming from those evil books you have. This is what happens when people read them." Amazingly, she had never read books like that. Therefore, one asks how she knew that her nightmares were originating from those books. I asked her to describe what her nightmare was like. At first, very apprehensive, she told me exactly what had happened. She described the approach of 3 people, entering into a big pod, glass spheres, and images of the moon, Earth, and the stars. And the people spoke evil things, like religion being bad for us, and I was there too. "It can only come from Satan the devil," she shouted. "Get rid of those books, and I know they have evil spells." "Do you really think that somebody put spells on those books?" I asked. "What about the Bibles? They too are books, and if there is anything like that, cannot Bibles also be inflicted with spells?" It seemed it only had to be my valuable and rare books I was demanded to get rid of, if I loved her. I felt that the Strohbachs had advised her to do it, just the same as their deeds, burning the lovely gifts my mother had sent me. Was it a Jehovah's Witness tradition? She must have believed that she had me under her complete control. Maybe it was due to her being brought up that way, and she had no idea how hurtful she had become by never giving me a chance to express myself freely, or allowing me to have a little interest in anything. I needed at least some freedom to be creative and excel in order to establish a better relationship and better family life while becoming a useful member of society. She was obviously in need of advice, given by people with mediocre minds, as long as they were witnesses and faithful servants of God. If they approved my interests, then perhaps she could accept me as I was. She sought opinions of other witnesses, like the Strohbachs, about my books, for example. Sadly, I can never forget how they burnt the gifts sent to me by my mother without my knowledge, later telling me all about their God-pleasing deeds. As expected, they could only advise her that some books were not from the light, and probably carried evil spells. Therefore, the best thing would be to burn them. She was doing everything exactly how the Strohbachs would have, burning them behind my back, and then telling me about her good deeds. Did Magda have any free will and reasonably functioning mind to ponder on how hurtful she had become? This way, the witnesses were supposedly helping a brother in need, just to win him over. This further proved to me that their religious belief system could only be based upon superstition. I am so grateful to Magda and the other witness brothers for helping to open my eyes to the real truth. Now I was more than ever certain that they were not only ruining lives and destroying relationships, they were also clearly proving what they really stood for, and I had to break away completely from such religious darkness, which belonged to the Dark Ages. I cannot forget how impossible it was to talk to her. It was not due to lingual difficulties we might have experienced, as she needed to improve her knowledge of English, and I needed to improve my accent in German, for we always understood each other extremely well as we spoke both languages. Whenever I attempted to have a heart-to-heart conversation, she preferred to pray to Jehovah to protect us from evil and help me understand the ways of God. In other words, she used to shut me off. Our communication and fundamentals of our family was based on shaky grounds, and I thought long and at length that my desire to settle in Sydney or Melbourne, no matter what the circumstances were going to be like, was the best action to take. Perhaps we could have a rest from the completely devastating, superstitious, and backward existence of religious intolerance. One day I met some people in the library while I was looking at a number of UFO-related books, and they showed great interest in the covers of the books I was looking at, and we started a conversation. One of their young relatives was apparently abducted by the extraterrestrials after his in-depth research and discovery of forbidden knowledge about them, and he had simply disappeared. That was their story, and I was unsure how it had developed into its current state. They were certain he was alive somewhere out there, and they had many sightings and some unusual activity in their home. Interestingly, they lived in the same neighborhood as we did. They became very friendly towards me, and if I could accept them as my friends, they would be grateful. I was happy to have friends like them, for I could talk about things of the unusual kind without concern. They told me that they sensed something different about me and invited me to their home one evening. I never spoke about this encounter to Magda, knowing what arguments it would cause. I also did not tell them about Magda or her beliefs. They knew only that I was married and living in the neighborhood. It interested me a lot when they exclaimed they sensed something different about me. Maybe I looked different racially and was accented in my speech, thus their consideration of me being somewhat different. Soon after, one evening, when Magda decided to go to the Kurdovik's place with little Annette to join their Bible reading session, I took the opportunity and visited these new friends. Richard Bach says, "Your friends will know you better in the first minute you meet them than your acquaintances will know you in 1,000 years." It was so delightful to experience a genuine friendship, expecting nothing other than smiles, acceptance, and a desire to share stories. They had several encounters with unusual people they believed to be unearthly, and one of their close relatives had disappeared. The police could not find any trace of this individual, even after a very long search. They declared there was no foul play and no evident motive. Forensically, many circumstances can be considered, because we are living in a world also populated with people of evil intent. Alas, sometimes people create stories to cope with their tragedies more easily. The family thought that, especially when a well-spoken and gentle person disappeared like that, it could be due to his forever interest in interstellar travel into other recesses of our universe. Maybe their relative journeyed into a parallel world and was happily living there. They suggested that I sat on a chair, which signified something very special for them, for it was that close relative's favorite. They hoped I might sense something about his person, and psychically tell them things they ardently wanted to hear. I understood how stressed they were in regard to that disappearance. I asked why they thought I could help them, and in answer they declared that when they met me in the library, it must have been deliberate, even so organized, and spoke about the most intriguing subject of visitors from other worlds. They were so sure that I could assist them because they sensed I was not from the known neighborhood. I felt they were under extreme stress, but could not detect anything psychologically significant. If I could help them, I would use all the knowledge available to me to do so, but at the same time I could not dismiss what they believed to be the truth, because I too had various experiences I could not deny. When I had my unusual experience, I originally considered it to be my dreaming, but when a number of reporters questioned me about what other people had observed, and the findings of a silica-type material on the ground with green grass embedded in it, where the tripod legs of an unusual vehicle had landed in front of our dwelling, it was something I could not discount. If it was a dream, how could others also observe it? That still remains a mystery. Feeling the need to explain to my newly found friends what I had experienced, they wanted to know more. They claimed that their relative was also keenly interested in discovering more about what they, along with a few other people, have experienced. Before those strange happenings, they were completely down to earth and did not believe in anything like that, but after what they had observed and the tragic event of losing a close relative, it got them believing in what once was unbelievable. They obviously needed something positive to hear. I explained a little about what I experienced, and they told me all about what they witnessed, which was an unusual sighting, at the same time. They were astounded. I hoped that I had not done anything wrong by telling them my story, but having discovered what they needed to hear helped them realize that they were not alone. I spoke about all the positive things, such as the galactic friend's journey into places. They were now more relaxed. I told them how I felt about their relative, who was more at ease and happy, and they were going to discover more about his experiences when the time was right. If I did not experience what I had during that evening, when we journeyed into space, I would have treated the situation differently. I could not fully analyze the event as it happened to me and Magda unexpectedly, and yet could not ignore it, for it actually happened in full realism. Otherwise, it would be unimaginable for others also, having observed those strange lights, descending and later ascending. Or else, my new friends too were hallucinating. I told them that our meeting at this time might be the only one, as I was to travel into distances far, but when in town, I was going to try to meet them. Even now, after all these years, I still ask, what are out there? Are we alone on this planet? The circle of my other so-called friends, their witnesses, including Magda, would never accept something like that as real. Even the Strohbachs would consider it as creative thinking, a silly dream, or a show presented by Satan the devil. Jehovah's Witnesses seem to know this devil intimately. But I still question, if it was nothing more than a dream, was I having the same experience at the same time with Magda? That would be a little too unusual. All the concepts, dreams, and imaginings presented here are my truth, as I experienced. Remember that some truths are very relative for every individual case. I am aware of the concept and reality of false memory originating and being dependent on stories we may have been told or read about a long time ago, which had possibly become an integral part of our fascinating memories. I'm also aware of the need to separate the chaff from the wheat. Indeed, what I have never been told about before seemed to have become part of my persistent memories. Interestingly, also, some of our dreams display similar characteristics and innuendos of fantasy. In fact, it seems that humans are the only living beings capable of creating their own fantasies. Throughout the centuries, this has been the case when they have created their fears, their deities, desires, and their myths. Due to their needs, when searching for answers about life and other important issues of existence or desires to control others, they created belief systems. What is discovered here, as I have fully recalled, has been my reality, and if you prefer to consider them as just dreams, I shall not be offended. However, if they make you think about possibilities, or use your imagination creatively and consider your future inventively, I will feel somewhat fulfilled. For at least I will know that my so-called dreams have been of some benefit. I spent a considerable time with my new friends for the first and possibly last time due to current lifestyle I had to endure, and living virtually in absolute fear of being accused as a wrongdoer and promptly chastised. Soon I was intending to travel to Melbourne. When I farewelled to those new friends with a few positive and constructive words, I knew it had created a lasting impression on them. I felt sad when leaving them, and was sure they felt the same. If my encouragement helped them, I am very happy. When others in my world are happy and healthy, I feel just the same. Horace Routledge says, "When you look at the world in a narrow way, how narrow it seems. When you look at it in a mean way, how mean it is. When you look at it selfishly, how selfish it is. But when you look at it in a broad, generous, friendly spirit, what wonderful people you find in it,